As a user submits a question about the first reactions we're hearing from The Little Mermaid. Chris, what do we got?
This is from Brandon. Hi, John. I think most people would agree that Disney has had a shoddy track record with their live action remakes. However, it seems as though they might have a big win on their hands with The Little Mermaid. The first reactions have come out, and while not everyone is loving it, the ones that do are saying it is the best Disney live action remake to date. If that claim is true, how big could this movie be at the box office?
All right, Brandon, thanks a lot for writing that in. Yeah, so the first screenings of The Little Mermaid have happened, and the first reactions are now coming out. And the question is a good one. We talked about this the other day. How big of a movie can this be? We talked about the initial projections for it being about $110 million opening weekend. Now, when we talked about that, we brought up a big, long list of the other Disney animated stuff that all made way under $110 million and did quite well at the box office. So that's $110 million would be theoretically a very solid number for something like A Little Mermaid. Well, the first reactions are now out. Is it good? Now, look, I have confessed on this show, I am not really a Little Mermaid guy. I don't look, when I think of my favorite animated films of all time, Little Mermaid doesn't come on my list. But this movie jumped pretty far ahead of the attention line for me when we saw some stuff at CinemaCon for it, including Ursula's number, Poor Unfortunate Souls by Melissa McCarthy, which was pretty dynamite, to be honest with you.
It really was.
I'll give it that. Well, now the first reactions are coming out, and they are basically this. The movie's great, but it's uneven. That seems to be the general consensus. Let's look at some of the reactions that came out here. Jazz Tangsi says, Disney's live action is magical, emotional, and enchanting. Rob Marshall just directed Disney's best ever live action film. Lin-Manuel Miranda and Alan Menken's beautiful music shines. Halle Bailey, by the way, I'm going to say Halle Berry several times today accidentally, so cut me some slack. Halle Bailey is absolutely extraordinary, and Melissa McCarthy is a badass Ursula. Courtney Howard wrote, though, charming, but incredibly spotty. Halle Bailey, Jonah Hauer-King, Melissa McCarthy, and Javier Bardem put their heart and souls into a film that can't escape its animated legacy. Best when it leads into campy bonkers, yet limits its fantasy elements for no reason. Then we got one from Simon Thompson, right? Endearing, but uneven. The Little Mermaid doesn't deliver the magic of the animated classic, but there are plenty of creative touches from Rob Marshall to float the audience's boats. Halle Bailey and Melissa McCarthy are great. Daveed Diggs and Awkwafina provide solid comic relief. Next up, we got one from Kristen Acuna, who says, Little Mermaid is filled with a few great performances from Halle Bailey and Melissa McCarthy, but it's a mostly paint-by-numbers remake that isn't as good as the animated masterpiece. I don't think a lot of people expect to be as good as the original. Our friend Jermaine Lucier was probably most critical when he said, it's real simple. Are you excited for The Little Mermaid? If so, you'll like it. It's exactly what you think it is. Are you skeptical and worried about it? That's valid too. It looks weird and disjointed. Bailey is great. McCarthy rules. The songs work, but it just feels so unnecessary. I gotta say, I love Jermaine, but I gotta say this. One of the things that I hate most when movie critics say, it's felt unnecessary when they're talking about a movie as a whole, because I'm thinking, you do know no film in the history of Hollywood has ever been necessary.
Meet
right?
Joe Dirt was.
What's that?
Meet Joe Dirt.
Other than Meet
That's
Joe Dirt.
cinema.
Yeah.
Other than Meet Joe Dirt, but whatever. So there's that. Now, but then you get a lot of glowing stuff, right? Again, before we get to those, Matt Neglia writes, it may look visually rough under the sea, but The Little Mermaid eventually recreates some of the original's magic through its timeless story and cast. Daveed Diggs and Melissa McCarthy are highlights, but Halle Bailey is the one that astonishes with her gorgeous singing and emphatic charm. Then we go on to Zoe Rose Bryan, who writes, The Little Mermaid is a live-action remake that retains the heart and soul of the story we know and love, and it's elevated even further by a note-perfect star-making performance from Halle Bailey. She was born to be on the big screen, and she's why this new take is worth watching. Then we get to Kathia Woods, who writes, Little Mermaid is a tribute to all little girls to dream big. Halle Bailey is sheer magic, and Daveed Diggs delights as Sebastian. Our friend Eric Davis, who I just bumped into at CinemaCon, right? Disney's Little Mermaid is definitely one of the better live action adaptations. Halle Bailey pours incredible emotion into Ariel, and I got chills watching her, while Melissa McCarthy's Ursula and Daveed Diggs' Sebastian steal scenes all day. And we'll end on this one. Felicia wrote, The Little Mermaid makes it pretty close to being the best live action Disney movie. However, it still struggles in the villain department. Halle Bailey is Ariel, and I had literal chills throughout her performance. This is a Little Mermaid retelling like you've never seen before. So, generally speaking, here's what I've gleaned. I read about 15 to 20 other ones. Generally speaking, this seems what I think we can boil it down to. The general consensus is the movie's great. Halle Bailey is phenomenal. I mean, like, even the people who are kind of more critical about the movie is like, yeah, this, but Halle Bailey is amazing. It reminds me a lot of the early criticism that came out for the theatrical version of Justice League, or sorry, Batman versus Superman. Because there were a lot of critics like, the movie didn't work. You know what? Ben Affleck was pretty awesome as Batman. Like that's the kind of sense I'm getting, that kind of Ben Affleck comparison. That's even some people who didn't seem to love Little Mermaid are saying, but Halle Bailey is fantastic. There was a little bit of a thread in there of some disjointedness, maybe some unevenness, a little bit of spottiness in the film. So that's something we're going to keep our eye on. But again, even those people are saying, but oh yeah, fuck, Halle Bailey. Halle Bailey?
Halle Bailey.
Halle Bailey. Halle Bailey apparently is a superstar. And everybody seems to be pretty damn happy with her. The same seems to be said of Melissa McCarthy, which is good. I'm really interested in seeing how Javier Bardem works out in this. Anyway, Chris, we've been looking forward to seeing what the first reactions for the film were going to be. They're out there. Are these right along where you thought? Are they better than you expected? Worse than you expected? What did you think?
I think this is all great. This is pretty much where I was hoping things would be. Halle Bailey, when we first got that casting notification about this, I was very, very excited. And that did give me hope about this film because her voice is so incredible. So I'm really, really happy to hear that she delivers and this is firing on all cylinders for her. Melissa McCarthy, I was a little more skeptical of after we saw that footage at CinemaCon. I was in. So I'm also happy to see that for the majority, everyone's also very on board with her. I'm really happy to hear about Daveed Diggs and Awkwafina doing well in this too. That makes me very happy. They're great performers, but I wasn't sure about how Scuttle and Sebastian were going to be in this film, especially since they're a little more realistic looking.
Well, and even in the footage we saw at CinemaCon, while we all loved what we saw at CinemaCon, the one thing we heard some people comment on coming out of CinemaCon was Sebastian and like, did that really work? I mean, it was only a very, very small, tiny little sample size.
No, Ariel. That was all we got.
Yeah, it was all Ariel. It was all Ariel.
So I'm very, very happy about these. The disjointed thing, that honestly has been such a through line for all of these live action remakes. I mean, honestly, for me, aside from Cinderella, most of these have been pretty crummy. You know, they don't live up to the magic and the wonder and the beauty of these other films. You think about something like Beauty and the Beast, which was an Academy Award nominated film, not for Best Animated Feature, but Best Picture.
First animated film ever to do it.
Yeah. These are incredible movies that really have a lot of nostalgia tied to them, and they actually are really, really fantastic films, too, in their own right. So it's really nice to see that this one is a higher caliber than those other live action ones. But again, for the most part, we continually have seen those kinds of remakes, these kinds of live action adaptations, not really delivering, and the animated classic remaining the one true film you should go see. That's not to say that, you know, this negates those existing or anything, but I feel like this is something that Disney just really needs to work on if they want to keep mining their own IP and do these live action adaptations. They really need to find out a way to make this feel a little more cohesive, since it's a constant note for all the ones they've done.
Here's where I think Disney might be in a no-win situation, though. I don't know that you can ever make a remake of an animated classic that people will be happy with. I mean, at least on whole, because it reminds me a lot of the whole thing about when there's a popular book. When you read the book first, this is why I have a rule that if there's a movie coming out that is based on a book and I haven't read that book yet, I will not read the book until I see the movie. Because when people read a book first, they now have the movie in their head.
That's true.
They know in their head what this should look like, what this should sound like, what this should be, whatever. And it's almost like no matter how good that movie on screen is, unless it didn't match up to what you wanted it to be and look like in your head. And I wonder if the fact that so many of us look at these animated things, like I loved Guy Ritchie's Aladdin. Loved it.
It's super fun.
But even though I loved it, I'm still like, yeah, but it's not as good as the original. Like, and I think there's a little bit of that in me too. So I wonder if it's a battle that Disney can ever win.
The one argument I'd make against that is just, and this is because I'm a theater kid, the stage adaptation of Beauty and the Beast is so good. It's so incredible. And so even that was, okay, I'm not going into the movie expecting beat for beat getting Paige O'Hara as Belle. I know I'm not getting that, but I'm going to get that beautiful Broadway production that I'm used to. And then they changed songs, and then there were other things. And honestly, Belle was kind of mean at points where I was like, why am I rooting for Gaston sometimes? I don't know. So there's a failure to really adapt correctly or well. And I think you're right that there is that kind of factor of, we just love these other things so much, but it's been done in other mediums. I feel like they can crack it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no excuse for like how Maleficent or some of those other ones turned out. But at any rate, guys, question is for you. The first reactions for The Little Mermaid are now out. Are they right around where you expected them? Are they worse than you expected? Are they much better than you expected? What are you looking forward to going in to see this movie? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, MasterClass. With MasterClass, you can learn from the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn filmmaking from James Cameron himself, you know, the guy who made 3 of the 4 biggest films of all time. Improve your writing by taking screenwriting from one of the greatest who's ever done it, Aaron Sorkin. Or maybe learn how to make great comedic content by taking comedy by the one and the only Judd Apatow. And many of you guys know I'm a big poker guy, and I recently got a chance to sit down and watch Daniel Negreanu, one of the greatest poker players in the world, teach poker. It was absolutely fantastic. But guys, whatever you're interested in, there is a class for you with over 180 exclusive classes taught by the instructors you know and love. And you can explore lessons in any order you'd like, across your phone, tablet, Apple TV, computer, and on the go with audio mode. Individual lessons range from about 10 to 15 minutes in length that fit easily into your everyday life. Guys, I highly recommend you check it out. Get unlimited access to every class, and as a John Campea Show listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/Campea now. That's masterclass.com/Campea for 15% off Masterclass.